This is the Jason Jones Show, powered by Mudhouse Media. Now, here's Jason Jones.
Aloha, everybody, and welcome to the Jason Jones Show. I am your host, Jason Jones. All right, I tried to do a campy, upbeat open, but now we're going to pause a little bit. I'm going to ask you a question. Where were you March 31st, 2005? You're like, Jason, how do you expect me to know where I was on March 31st, 2005? If you were 15 years old in 2005, I promise you, you know where you were that day. And I'm going to remind you. March 31st, 2005 was the day that we as a people starved and dehydrated Terri Schiavo. And she died. Where were you? I was in Waikiki in my apartment on Kuhio Avenue with my girlfriend, who is now my wife, watching the news. And we couldn't believe what was unfolding. In fact, I didn't think this was going to happen. I was trusting that Jeb Bush or George W. Bush would step up. Somebody would do something. And I thought there was no way that we as a people we didn't unplug Terri Schiavo. No, what happened was we starved her to death. We dehydrated her to the point of death. We denied her food and water. And it was really, to me, a day worse than 9/11 because we were not only the victim, a young woman was a victim, but we were the perpetrators of the crime, we as a people. Well, today I want to remember, I actually want to celebrate the life of Terri Schindler Schiavo. I hate saying her last name because it's not her last name. It was the name of her husband, who, as you can imagine, I'm not a fan of Michael Schiavo. But I am a good friend. I've become a good friend since 2005, 2006. I've become a very good friend with Terri's brother, Bobby Schindler. And so today we're going to have Bobby Schindler on the show. And I really just wanted to know about Terri because I really want March 31st to be a day we celebrate her life. I want March 31st to be a day we remember not only Terri, but her beautiful family, her parents, who were so devoted to her, fought for her till the end and beyond. And then I've watched her brother up close as his friend. I've watched him with such passion and zeal fight for other families that are going through similar tragedies of their own right now. And I've watched him now. It's been since 2000. I think we met shortly after his sister passed. So really it's been for 16 years I've just watched him in his relentless struggle to defend the vulnerable from their own governments, from their own families. It's really sad, but you're going to get to know Terri Schiavo. Many of you, if you're younger, you may not know who she is. But any history book, any book written about the modern history of the United States of America will have Terri Schiavo's name in it, as well it should. Because it was a defining day for the history of this country, like Roe v. Wade. Where Roe v. Wade, we denied protection. We said, we're not going to protect the child in the womb. We're not going to allow states to protect the child in the womb. What happened to Terri was we signaled that, guess what? We're not going to be there for you at the end of life or in those challenging moments that could be just in the middle of your life. We're going to abandon you. We're going to abandon you. But most importantly, I just want you to get to know Terri. I want you to know her brother. And so this is Terri Schindler, the whole story with her brother, Bobby Schindler. This episode is being brought to you by the Vulnerable People Project, standing in solidarity with the vulnerable. From the child in the womb to the child in Darfur, go to thegreatcampaign.org. If you become a monthly donor, you get a free copy of my book, The Race to Save Our Century, and I wrote that with the great John Zmirak. This episode is also being brought to you by MyPillow. My Pillow not only supports my show, they're not only a sponsor of my show, I can promise you they're sponsoring all your favorite podcasts. It's like imprimatur. If My Pillow is sponsoring a show, you know it has to be good. Now, am I saying my show is good? I don't know. But I am grateful that I'm sponsored by My Pillow primarily because I get all kinds of My Pillow stuff. And I've been sleeping with that My Pillow now for several months, and I have never, ever slept better. What I like about the pillow is it doesn't go flat, it doesn't get hot. You're not flipping the pillow all night, waking up, flipping the pillow now, flip it, keep knocking yourself out of REM sleep. No, you sleep great. You can wash and dry it as many times as you want. It's made in the USA. And right now, there's a buy one, get one free on the Giza Dream Sheets. Those Giza Dream Sheets are amazing. They are made with the world's best cotton called Giza, grown only in a region between the Sahara Desert, the Mediterranean Sea, and the Nile River. It's a long staple cotton, which means it's soft and breathable. It's made of a sateen weave. Now, I've been saying sateen weave since I started working for My Pillow, okay? And then I got an email from somebody who said it's satin weave. It's S-A-T-E-E-N. Email me at jason@movie2movement. Is it sateen weave or satin weave? But whatever it is, sateen or satin, it gives it a luxurious finish. It is available in multiple colors, styles, and sizes. Machine washable and durable, 10-year warranty, and 60-day money-back guarantee. Go to mypillow.com, click on the radio listener square, and use the code Jones for deep, deep discounts. Let's get to meet the wonderful Terri Schindler Schiavo. Get to know her through the eyes of her little brother, Bobby Schindler. And also, let's dispel some of the misconceptions about what happened to this lovely, lovely young woman, Bobby Schindler, on the Jason Jones Show. Aloha, Bobby Schindler. Welcome to the Jason Jones Show.
Thank you, Jason. It's good to talk to you.
Yeah, it's good. You know, you're like a brother to me. You're a close friend. We don't talk enough. And we used to see each other a lot more. It's been a while, right? We used to see each other a lot more, but I guess in this COVID world, I feel like I haven't seen you in forever.
Well, I always could count on seeing you at the March for Life. I just like you, we seem to run into all our pro-life friends at the March every year. It's always good. I mean, I know it marks a sad day in history, but it's always good to be there to see so many of our pro-life friends at the March each year.
Yeah, it is a sad day in history, but we're there to celebrate life. And I hear a lot of kind of scrupulous pro-lifers that say, I think the March for Life, it's hundreds of thousands of people going there and celebrating. Yes, we are celebrating the incomparable dignity and beauty of the human person, the dignity of the child in the womb. We picked that sad day to commemorate Roe versus Wade. And in many ways today, well, not in many ways, in exactly the same way, and maybe even and definitely in a more personal way for you, but maybe in a really personal way for so many of us, today marks a day as tragic as Roe versus Wade. And I was 2 when Roe happened, and so I don't remember where I was, but today marks the anniversary of your sister, Terri Schindler Schiavo's passing, and I can remember it like I can remember 9/11. And in many ways, it's obviously, it has the sense of shame because we participated in this tragedy as a community, as a political community. And for you, it's much more intimate because Terri Schiavo is your sister. And so today is that tragic anniversary, which is like a bookend to Roe versus Wade.
Right. Well, you're right, Jason. Today is the 16th anniversary of Terry's death. I can't believe it's been that many years. The work that we do day to day is a constant reminder of what happened to my sister and what's happening every day to others like her. But I got to tell you, it's interesting. I've heard from so many people over the years, and they say just that they were watching what was happening with Terry's case. Some were down there in front of the hospice facility praying, and people tell me all the time, even to this day, I get emails where they'll say, that they remember exactly where they were when they heard that Terri died. And it was just one of those events where people, it was getting so much publicity at the time, and it was such so tragic and inhumane and an injustice what was happening, that people remember that day and don't forget. And they oftentimes will contact me and just let me know that they're still praying for our family and how much of an impact Terri had on them, even today as we speak.
Yeah, I was dating my wife, and we were following it, and I was confident the entire time. I'd say, no way. This is not, President Bush is not going to let this happen. Jeb Bush is not going to let this happen. And it was almost a point of unbelief as it was unfolding and it was happening. And my heart, it was a really shameful day in this country. And I don't know if you know this or you have since heard, but it was used as a major recruiting tool for Islamist organizations. Have you heard about that?
I'm sorry, for what kind of organization?
Islamist organizations like Al-Qaeda.
Oh, no.
Al-Qaeda, it was such a scandal in other parts of the world that have a tradition of venerating the vulnerable and the elderly and the sick, that it was used as a recruiting tool because people were so scandalized around the world. It was such a shameful moment for us around the world. It was actually used as a recruiting tool. And this was discovered, of course, when some of these people were caught. And it just shows you what it was something that rocked the entire world. But I want people to know your sister, because 16 years ago isn't that long ago, right? I mean, I graduated college 22 years ago. I can remember, close my eyes, remember conversations I had with my friends and what I was doing, my day-to-day activities like it was yesterday. And I have to imagine to you, Terri, it was just yesterday you were with your sister. Can you tell us about your sister and your family, like your mother? I always see your mother's big, bright smile, and how many siblings were there, and what was your life like, and what was Terri like?
Sure. Well, you're right, Jason, because people, when they started following the case, they really didn't know my sister. They only knew that she had sustained a brain injury and was, was basically dependent on us for her care. But prior to her collapse, she was 26 years old when she collapsed, and she was if you've seen pictures of my sister before she collapsed, she was just a beautiful young lady. And we grew up outside of Philadelphia. We were a very close family. There was my father and my mother, Robert and Mary, and then Terri was the first child. And she was born in 1963. I was born 13 months later. I guess they refer to us as Irish twins. And Terri and I were very close as we grew older. And then we had a younger sister, Suzanne, who was born in 1968. And as I said, we all grew up outside of Philadelphia, and we had a very happy upbringing. I just remember there was a large extended family, and we used to get together for the holidays and family members' birthdays, and just remember a lot of the good times we had. Terri was somewhat shy growing up. She wasn't into athletics. Suzanne and I, we played sports throughout our young years and into high school, where Terri was she was more introverted and really didn't was involved in sports. But the one thing she did have was a passion for animals. And not only did she want to grow up and get it when she got older, wanted to work at a zoo and eventually talked about becoming a veterinarian, but she also was really artistic, and she would draw pictures of animals, mostly Disney characters, and she was very good. In fact, we still have those pictures, and she was very talented. And I don't know where that came from, because nobody else in our family was really any good at drawing. But she did have this love for animals, and spent a lot of her time learning about animals. And I just remember that about my sister. But she also had a great sense of humor, an infectious laugh. And as she got older, she kind of came out of her shell, where she wasn't as introverted as she was in her younger years. And as we got older, and after Terri got married to Michael, and we all moved to St. Petersburg, Florida. And Terri and I, at that time, Michael was working nights, and Terri and I were working days. So we were spending a lot of time together at night, being in our young 20s.
You were very close that you moved together. So your big sister moved to Florida, and you moved to Florida to be with her.
That's right. My dad, he semi-retired, sold his business in Philadelphia, and the entire family relocated down to Florida after I graduated college. Yeah, and we were all living very close to one another, and there were happy times. Terri and I, as I said, spent a lot of time together. We were going out quite a bit and just became very close. When this happened unexpectedly, it was a shock to our family and something we never anticipated. We'd be confronted with, which was to have to care for my sister, who, one day was fine, and the next day she was dependent on others for her care. So it was quite a change in our life, and really without any type of warning.
What was your last memory with your sister before she sustained the brain injury?
Well, we lived in the same apartment complex. She was living in an apartment with Michael, her husband, and I was living not far from her, just a few doors down. And I was living with a buddy of mine, and she had come over. It was a Saturday night, and she had come over to visit my friend, my buddy, my roommate, and I were going to be going out. We're going out, so we asked Terri. She would often come out with us because, as I said, Michael worked at night. So instead of sitting home alone, she would join us. And I asked her if she wanted to come with us, and she said no. She was going to go home and wait for Michael to get home. He was a restaurant manager, and they had been fighting, Jason, and she wanted to be there when Michael got home to see him and talk to him. So she chose not to go out with us, and that was really the last. I remember my last memory of my sister was I put on a pair of dress pants to go out with my friend, and they were wrinkled. So she said, "Take those pants off. I need to iron them for you." And so I did. She ironed them for me, and I said goodbye. I'll see you tomorrow, which I often saw her on Sundays, and that was it. That was the last time I saw my sister before she collapsed.
And that was, you were going out Saturday night, and you said you often saw her on Sundays. Would you go to church together, or just have brunch together, or what would you do?
Yeah, we would go to church at times. I talk about when I talk. I always tell the story how I really became a fallen away Catholic. So I wasn't going to church as much, but Terri would go to church on Sundays with my parents. Michael was not a practicing Catholic, but I would always see Terri. As I said, we lived so close. There was, there didn't seem like a day that went by where I didn't see her, either go to visit her or she would come over visit me.
I mean, my little sister's in many ways my best friend, and she actually came to live with me in Hawaii. She started coming to live with me when she was 16. And so I know how, like you said, you guys were friends. You lived in the same complex. You moved to be near her from Philadelphia. And then one day she's gone. Before the injury, or let me ask you this now, whenever we have a loved one, are there any songs, or what reminds you of your sister? What will trigger a memory? Sometimes it's a season or a smell or a food or a song. What triggers memories?
Yeah, well, I know there are particular. I remember she was a big fan of. Remember George Michael, Wham? Remember that rock group? So there was a song in particular. It was called "Careless Whisper." And anytime that song I hear, immediately, reminds me of Terri. So, and also, Labrador Retrievers. We had a Labrador Retriever growing up. So whenever I would see a yellow lab, almost instantly it reminds me of my sister. So things like that. Yeah, there are things that triggers memories of my sister, certain songs, as I mentioned, particularly animals though, because my sister had such a love for animals that they often trigger memories of my sister particularly when I see a yellow lab, because of her affection for our pet yellow lab we had growing up.
So when the injury happened, and there's, controversy around that, right? So I guess Michael claims she had an eating disorder, but they had been fighting and there was signs of abuse. There'd been a history of abuse, right? And violence.
Right. Well, we didn't know to the extent, Jason, but yeah, there was. We found out after Terri's collapse that there was some, and she even shared with me before her collapse how unhappy she was in her marriage, and I guess the controlling nature of Michael. But we just didn't know the extent of it. So it's hard to know just how much was what was going on prior to her collapse. But we had reasons to suspect. And unfortunately, we didn't suspect right after Terri's collapse. But as years went by and we started kind of connecting the dots, we really wondered what happened that night Terri's collapse and if Michael was the one responsible for causing her injury that she sustained.
And then there's 15 years between the injury and then Michael and the state conspiring together, as I see it, to kill her. How did the caregiving process progress from 1990 until 2005?
Right. So Terri collapsed in 1990, 26, and as we kind of mentioned here, we still have no idea what caused her collapse. So for 2 years after her collapse, Michael was Terri's guardian, so he was in control of her care, medical decisions, and she was starting to improve, Jason. A lot of people don't know that she was receiving pretty aggressive therapy and rehabilitation to the point where she was starting to improve, where she was forming words. Now, she had a severe brain injury, so this was significant for someone like Terri. Even slight improvements like that were encouraging. Terri was not in a coma, not brain dead. The only thing sustaining her, she was not on a ventilator. Only thing sustaining her was food and hydration because she had difficulty swallowing because of the brain injury that she sustained. So that was all that was keeping her alive. Food and water, just like it keeps us all alive, but she needed a feeding tube to administer it to her. But for the first 2 years, she was starting to improve. Unfortunately, somewhere around 1992, 1993, Michael completely shifted his loyalties, where he was once doing everything he could to help Terri and improve her condition, to where he was now determined to end her life. And from 1992 up until 1998, there was really a lot of legal battles going on where my parents were trying to remove him as guardian from my sister. He was living with another woman that he admittedly was going to marry. There was a significant amount of money in a medical trust fund that Michael would inherit if Terri would die. So
the trust fund, he fought for the trust fund to provide for her lifetime of care, correct?
That's right, Jason. Yeah, a lot of the details were really omitted in this battle.
He fought out because he said she wanted to live forever, to get the money to care for her forever. He gets the trust fund. Did his tune change as soon as he realized he could inherit the trust?
Not long after, Jason. We're talking within weeks. Yes,
weeks.
He did it. He did within a complete 180 from when the trust fund was established for my sister, and he was living with another woman. Yeah, and he basically went on his pursuit to end Terri's life, and there was a lot of things happening in the courts that really weren't making the news at that time, and it wasn't until 1998 when Michael formally petitioned the court in Pinellas County Formula asking permission from a court if he could remove Terri's food and hydration, her feeding tube, which would lead to her death by starvation and dehydration.
He was fighting for this medical trust, or fighting for the fund, I guess, that was going to go into this trust. Did he once ever mention that Terri wanted to end? She would not want to be have food and hydration if this were to happen. Was it ever mentioned once?
No, it was never mentioned. The first time we heard that Terri had these so-called verbal wishes was almost 10 years after her initial collapse. That's what made it so unbelievable, quite honestly. And that's what Michael, when he petitioned the court in 1998, that's what he was saying now, that Terri made these verbal wishes. It was all hearsay evidence, Jason. These verbal wishes that if she ever was in this type of condition, she would not want to live this way. To this day, Jason, there's no doubt in my mind that Michael fabricated these wishes. He perjured himself to the judge so he could accomplish what he was trying to set out to accomplish, which was to end my sister's life.
What year did they get married?
1984.
And
November, almost 1985.
So they were married for 6 years. Who was the closest person in the world to her, would you say? Like, who were you? I mean, your family, I don't know. This is a question, next question, but who was she close to? I mean, obviously you were very close. You moved to be with your sister. I'll tell you, my sister knows me, and I've been married for 15 years as well as my wife. Like, if I had wishes like that, my sister would know before my wife, right? And did you ever hear her express anything like this?
No, Jason. As I said, it's hard to even believe that Terri said anything like Michael was claiming that she was saying. In fact, it's more than hard to believe. It's not believable. And yet, Suzanne, Terri and I were extremely close. I'd say Terri and I were probably closer than. I know she was close with my mom and dad, and she had a couple close friends, but her and I were about as close as siblings could be, and never once did she ever even say anything. It was quite the contrary. She loved life, Jason, and if there's anything that even would cross Terri's mind of something like that, of that significance, she would have shared it with me.
Well, for it to be true, for me to believe it, I would have to say the apple fell from the tree and rolled down the hill, because when I meet your family, I've had the privilege of knowing you and meeting your family and meeting your mom and dad. You're a family that loves life, and you're a soulful family, a spirited family. And I can't imagine someone from your family wishing that, especially how through all of the hardship you stuck together and were striving to preserve and care for your sister. So it doesn't make sense. Now, if your mom and dad were arguing, or you had a sibling that said no, but you were all together and saying, this is not our sister's wishes and we wish to care for her.
Well, and if you went back, and obviously people, wouldn't know to do this, but if you looked at the timeline of this case, and why would it take almost 10 years for Michael to come forward and say that Terri made these wishes? As I said, he needed a reason for the court to consider removing Terri's food and hydration, and this is what he presented to the court. This is what he testified to the court, and the whole thing was based on a lie, Jason. And to this day, you'll never convince me otherwise.
Now, I want to ask you a question about your family going from there. So it was clear to me from the very beginning, as I was following this with my girlfriend, who's now my wife. I think it was clear to America that this was all built on a lie. As, by the way, that whole euthanasia-assisted suicide movement from its very beginning with the Hemlock Society is built on, as you know better than anyone in the world, just one lie after another, after another, after another. But I want to ask you about you and your family. When I first met your mom and your dad, and I first met you, and there's a sadness and a burden that I've seen in all of your eyes. The way when you meet someone who lost a child to cancer or lost a child to drinking and driving, there's this real weight that I see that you guys carry. Do you feel that burden has lessened, or is that burden grown as you see what had happened to your sister as it's happening to so many families now?
Yeah, that's a difficult question. It's a good question, Jason. As I said earlier, there's not a day that doesn't go by where I don't think of my sister. I know my sister is at peace, and I'm sure she's in the arms of Christ today. The moment she passed, but my heart breaks for my dad and my mom, because I know my dad died not long after Terri passed away. And he, my dad had been through, and my mom had been through an awful lot, obviously, trying to defend their daughter from this happening. And my dad told me not long after Terri died that he would never be able to forgive himself for not being able to stop this from happening, preventing his daughter from dying from these people, doing this to his daughter. And I can't even imagine the pain that he felt seeing his daughter die this way, and there was nothing as a father he could do to stop it. I can't imagine his heartache, and it's really what led to his death. It was something he can never live with, and as I said, my heart breaks for my father and my mom too, because I know my mom saw my father and the pain that he was experiencing seeing his daughter die this way.
What's sad about that is, and it's easier for other people to see, but your family could not have behaved more nobly. Your mom and your father and you, there's no way that you could have behaved more beautifully. That your response to this tragedy is what is beautiful about this entire, what was a tragedy. What brought shame to America brought nobility to your family. It was a shame for our country, but for you and your mom and your dad, how you as a brother You're the type of brother every woman would want. Your fidelity to her after the injury and to the very end, and even now, spending your entire life honors her. And it's sad that I think your father would have probably, now he knows it in eternity, obviously, and he would have maybe come to understand it. But yeah, I can't imagine the helplessness that he felt. Were there moments of, did you think Jeb Bush was going to step up? President Bush was going to, were there moments of hope in those last weeks?
Our whole family, as the case was gaining more and more publicity, we had people like Glenn Beck, who was just, every day was going on the air, it seemed, and just doing everything he could to get support from our family. I think he's really the reason, because he was a local radio, he had a program in Tampa, and he was the one really pleading with Jeb Bush to get involved, which he eventually did. So I think, with the support that was growing and the publicity it was getting, and the people that were coming forward to helping us. I mean, you think about the governor of Florida, the president of the United States, Pope John Paul, the Vatican. We really felt very confident that they were going to be able to stop this somehow. And when Terry, when everything was exhausted on March 18th, her feeding tube was removed. It was hard to believe that they were successful, that this death culture was successful in stopping these most powerful people that were helping us from saving my sister. So yeah, it was difficult, but not nearly as difficult as having to watch my sister die, over a 2-week period of having no food and water. That was just grotesque, gruesome, and it's everything you can ever imagine it would be, watching a human being starve and dehydrate to death, Jason. It was just absolutely terrible.
And now, as I know, it's unimaginable. And I get, your family has such a strong devotion. You're devout Catholics, and the only person who what you experienced was like what the Blessed Virgin Mary experienced. That's what your parents experienced, right? I mean, they had to be there with your sisters. And was it during Holy Week as well? This week it falls during Holy Week. Was it Holy Week then? Do you remember?
Yeah, yes, it was, Jason. It was happening during the Easter season, and it's just there's so many things happening during Terry's death. I mean, it's hard to imagine, what was going on at the time that Terry was dying. In fact, I don't know, people might remember this, but Pope John Paul, who was involved with Terry's case, where he issued an allocution a year prior to Terry's death, clarifying church teachings on situations like Terry. But nevertheless, he was dying, if people remember. And the very day, March 31st, that Terry died, today, Pope John was given a feeding tube, and then he died 2 days after Terry did. So
that's right.
Terry. It was really quite a contrast, because on one hand you had Terry dying in the most undignified way, and then Pope John Paul 2 days later dying in what would be considered a very dignified way. So you saw, just the two extremes of what was happening, and one in our nation with Terry dying in a barbaric death, and then Pope John Paul, the example of what is, how you die in a dignified way, receiving a feeding tube, just as my sister was being sustained by a feeding tube until it was denied to her, 2 weeks before.
Yeah, and I think that's the greatest misconception that must frustrate you, right? People think that the plug was pulled. There was no plug that was pulled. Her feeding tube was removed. Her hydration, she was denied food and water. It wasn't as if she was, hooked up to all these apparatus. She was denied the human right to food and water.
Yeah, it's incredible to me that what happened to Terry is happening every day now, Jason. I mean, there was a time where taking away food and water from a cognitively disabled person would be a criminal act. But what's happened is, words are very important, and we've redefined the administration of food and hydration through a feeding tube, where it was once considered basic care, where today it's considered medical treatment. And because of this shift or this change in how we classify feeding tubes, it's legal now in all 50 states to either remove it or deny it from individuals. And that's what's so frightening. And that's why we do the work that we do every day, to try and do what we can to let people know, look, there are countless lives out there that are in jeopardy of having their life-affirming care stop because of how, the direction of our culture and how things are changing and putting more and more of these people, these medically vulnerable people, at risk. But yeah, Terri was receiving food and hydration through a feeding tube because she had difficulty swallowing because of a brain injury, and for that she was sentenced to die. It's just, as you said earlier, it's unthinkable to see, that how we can allow this to happen and justify it happening, and it's happening every day as we speak. It's just, it's terrible.
I know your great frustration is the abortion debate rages, and it's always in the headlines. But what's happening to our disabled, our elderly, and our sick at the end of life, or even in the middle of what could be a long life when they're vulnerable, but we're just ending their lives, it's hard to break into the news cycle. Why is that? Why it's hard to even get the pro-life movement animated on this? And so these are crimes that are happening every day, but in secret. Why isn't this breaking into the headlines? It's just, I know you're fighting these battles every day. Maybe you can share with us. I know you don't have much time left, but maybe you can share with us what can we do, all of us, to make sure that those who are vulnerable in life can get the same amount of attention as the battle to defend those who are vulnerable at the beginnings of life, and maybe give us some examples of some battles you're fighting right now.
Yeah, that's a great question and observation, Jason. It's one of my frustrations. This movement, they're just as aggressive as the abortion movement. These people that are changing the laws, changing hospital policies, they're just as aggressive, and they're working hard every day to make it easier. And this is all, it falls under the same umbrella as financial. I mean, it's much less expensive to end someone's life prematurely than it is to continue care long term. So, there's this movement to remove these safety nets that were what's in place for these medically vulnerable individuals. So, but unfortunately, we're not getting the attention that you get on abortion legislation, on everything, everything that's being done to stop and prevent and educate people on abortion. You're just not getting the same type of zeal when it comes to this issue. And for that, as I said, more and more people are at risk because you're not getting the same pushback against the laws that are being changed, against the policies that are being changed in the hospitals. So it makes it very difficult to defend these individuals because you're really at the mercy now of healthcare, of administrators, of doctors, of ethicists that are changing these rules, so to speak, and putting all these people at risk. So we work, we try. So you know what, Jay, the best thing we can do for ourselves right now, and because things have changed so much, is really just finding a heroic advocate. So what that means is, if we do become incapacitated and we find ourselves in a situation like Terri, we need to appoint someone that's going to step in and fight for us if whoever it is might be trying to deny us life-affirming care. And that's what we do every day, and we see it every day because families call us all the time in crisis because their family members who are, whether they're brain injury, the elderly, whatever medically vulnerable situation that they're facing, are at risk of having their treatment denied or withdrawn. So we need heroic advocates. Make sure you find a heroic advocate that you appoint that's going to fight for you if you find yourself incapacitated, unable to speak for yourself, and need someone to step in and fight for you in those types of situations. That's the best advice I could give today because things are so tilted in one direction that unless we have someone fighting for us, it's going to be hard really to change anything to the degree where it's going to impact these lives other than having someone fight for you in circumstances that we're talking about
now,
today.
On your organization, can you does it walk us through on how to appoint a heroic advocate?
Sure. You can go on. There's an organization called Patients' Rights Council. They've been around for a long time, and what they've done is they've adapted these forms that recognize the laws in each state that you can pull up on your computer, and you can download the form, and then you sign it. And I think you have to get it notarized. I'm not exactly sure, but if not, but those forms you identify a person that would be basically your medical decision maker if in fact you became unable to speak for yourself. There's also National Right to Life. It's called a Will to Live, and essentially is the same type of document. But you can go online and on either place, the Patients' Right Council, National Right to Life, download these forms.
I'm going to put both these forms in the show notes. And Bobby, I'm glad you said to do this. Yeah, this is something, and we need not just do it for ourselves. We need to pester our sisters and our brother. Hey, get this, your cousins. You have to make sure everyone in your family has this, right? Because it wouldn't have done you enough to have one for yourself. You would have had to make sure your sister had this. And so,
right, it's your best defense against what's happening today, Jason.
Are there any battles right now that you're fighting for families that you would like people to know about?
Well, yes. I mean, we're involved in cases all the time. For privacy reasons, we can't really go into a lot of detail. But yeah, I mean, it's the same scenarios where and what's happening today, Jason, is I kind of alluded to this, but decisions are being made awfully quick. Instead of particularly when people experience a brain injury, it seems to me that doctors are making decisions awfully quick. We're talking within days to stop treatment without giving these individuals the amount of time they need to see if the brain can recover. So, I mean, we could go on for the next hour or two, and I could describe, I think, the reasons for this. But nevertheless, these decisions are being made quickly. Families are called because they want time. They're asking for reasonable requests from the doctors and the hospitals, but yet doctors they're the ones making decisions. And I think if I had to sum it up, Jason, and again, I think, it's cost containment driving these decisions, but it seems to me that hospitals today, and I'm not, look, I'm painting a broad brush. I mean, there's some wonderful hospitals and facilities out there and wonderful doctors and nurses. We deal with them every day, but it seems to me that hospitals today are looking out for their best interests rather than the patient's best interests a lot of time. And they're trying to stop care to save money rather than extend care to see if a person can be helped in an effort to save the hospital, they're basically money.
We see this with Cuomo in New York. He sent people with COVID to nursing homes and to group homes for the cognitively impaired and the developmentally disabled. Right? He didn't send people with COVID to upscale nursing homes, right? No, they sent them into the vulnerable communities. I don't know if you heard about what was revealed a couple of weeks ago, that they also sent them to group homes. They sent people with COVID
I have
to
an
group
article.
homes.
Yeah, I have an article coming out on lifenews.com where I talk about this, Jason. You're right, but why are we surprised, Jason? I mean, that's the growing worldview today. We have a type of modern day eugenics going on, and it started with abortion. Well, it was even before that. But abortion, you start devaluing the lives of the unborn child. You start making it, you start killing the unborn child, where it's even now evolved into, infanticide. But you start imposing death on the innocent unborn child. You don't think it's only going to be a matter of time before that starts spilling over into the medically vulnerable, the elderly, and others that aren't unable to defend themselves? So, we look at what Cuomo did, and people are outraged, which is great. I mean, I'm glad people are outraged at what's happening, but why are we surprised? I mean, that's just the attitude and mindset that's evolving in our nation and globally, that there are certain individuals whose life is not worth caring for or spending the money to help. So, I mean, it just comes down to that. I mean, I know I'm oversimplifying things here, but
you hit the nail on the head. We thought that teenagers and poor people shouldn't have children because it would make their life so hard. We sure as heck then and look, it's not just bureaucrats and hospitalists making these decisions and legislators. It's families who are saying, hey, I didn't sign up for this. I planned on retiring and moving to Florida and golfing all day. I didn't want to take care of my child who had a brain injury or a wife that has Alzheimer's. That's not what my daydream was. That's not why I worked 40 hours, 50, 60 hours a week and invested this money. It's because I want to go on cruises half the year and to Vegas the other half of the year. We forget, like, this is why your family, your mother and your father, and why you and your sister, you've been such beautiful examples that, no, that's not what life is. Life is a valley of tears, but what makes it beautiful is when we live for each other and we serve. Your sister's last act was to look at you going out to a nightclub like a knucklehead with wrinkled pants and chase the women away because that guy can't even iron his pants. And your sister's last act was like, give me those pants. I can't let my brother go out like that, right? That was her. That was her heart of service. It is the same heart that you have for your sister. That, you got married much older in life, I think, probably because you committed your entire, 20s and 30s were consumed by serving and loving your sister. And by the way, I became a teen dad, and all the people that looked at me and said, oh, that poor guy's life is over. I got to tell you, their lives, I look at their lives and go, oh my gosh, I'm glad I didn't live their vapid life, their boring, soulless life. Being a teen parent, was very challenging. Caring for your sister after her injury was, I'm sure, very challenging, but it filled your life with beauty and joy, and that's why you and your parents fought for your sister. But I think most people, maybe even many here listening, you're like, nah, I didn't sign up for that. But that's what life is, right? To care for each other when we're vulnerable. To care for our spouses and our siblings and our parents. That's what life is about.
You're absolutely right. You know what people are missing, Jason, when it comes to people like Terri, and so many families have shared this with us over the years that are caring for people with disabilities and people with brain injuries. They're missing the beauty of these individuals and how God has blessed them. Yes, it is challenging at first, but once you get past that and you see the beauty and how special these people are, you know why, Jason? Because they enable you. You are able to express your love in a way that you never thought you were capable of expressing, because these people are completely vulnerable to your care. Because without your care, they would die. So we feel, people, if you talk to people that are caring for those that are in the disabled state, they feel God has blessed them with these special souls where you're able to express your love and compassion in a way that you never thought you were able, you could do if these people weren't in your lives. So, it's a shame, because I think people are making these decisions, and again, I speak in general terms, but people are making these types of terrible decisions are people, I think, that have never cared, have the opportunity to care for these people that are disabled, and where you're able to express your love through caring for them.
Well, your family is an example of that the world watched you in awe. And I think all of us, we can learn from you. And this sad day, this sad anniversary, like the anniversary of Roe versus Wade, like, we can learn from you to celebrate life, to celebrate our family, even in their moments of vulnerability and when they're frail and we have to care for them. And really, your family was just was a beautiful example for us to learn from. And if all of us could be so thoughtful, so caring, and so compassionate, and I don't even want to know what kind of vapid, sad life that thin-souled ghoul Michael Schiavo is living. God, I wouldn't want to be in his shoes.
Yeah, well, Jason, we people would say, come up and share with us, how heroic and especially thought our family was. But I've said this so many times before. I never looked at it that way. I never thought our family was doing anything extraordinary. Quite honestly, we were just doing what you're supposed to do for a loved one, right? We're defending a loved one's life. And I think any person faced with the same circumstances, I hope, would do the same thing our family did. So there was nothing special about wanting to care for and defending, your sister, your daughter's life. I mean, this is something I think any family member ought to do if confronted with the same type of circumstances.
Well, there was a time, Bobby, where I think your family did what any normal family, healthy family would do. But the laws form us. The laws change us as a people. And so the laws have trained us to abandon our children, to abandon our own children in the womb. Our laws have formed us to abandon our spouses when they're sick or injured, our children. That's what's happened. And so, but your family stood up to the spirit of the age and said, no, we're going to stand with our sister. We're going to stand with our daughter. I know that today is a busy day for you, and you have a lot of media to do. So I just thank you for coming on the show. And I've just always looked, I don't know if you know this, I've always looked up to you as a role model, as someone I admire greatly, is if I could have the grace to be a man like you. I've seen so many photos and videos of the way your sister would look at you, even in those last weeks, and look at your mom and dad, and you could see that she was there, like fully there and loving you, and you could see, isn't that something people don't know too, right? Like she responded to you. She knew when you were there. She would glow with love for you, and the media has lied every step of the way about what happened to your sister in the state that she was in.
Yeah, no, you're right, Jason. And I mean, the media is the media, and yeah, Terri, there's no doubt that my sister was understanding and knowing we were there with her, and at times she was able to visibly illustrate that she knew she was there being, and we were doing everything we could to show her how much we loved her, and we're never going to stop fighting for her. So, but thank you for the kind words, Jason. I really appreciate that. It's always good talking to you. I look at you the same way, and we're all in this together. We're all fighting for the sanctity of life and the dignity of life, and it's always a pleasure, working with so many wonderful pro-lifers that I've met over the years, and only because of what my sister went through. So thank you. I appreciate what you said.
We've knit together a beautiful family. I remember finally just traveling around Iowa with you. I actually coined the term whole life, really for you. It was inspired by you because I couldn't believe that the pro-life movement was sort of indifferent to this issue. And as I began to see that it just didn't animate them the way it should, is why I coined the term. I don't know if you remember this, a whole life. We did the pro-life whole life tour, me, you, and Francis Bach, who had been a slave in Sudan. We traveled Iowa together, speaking on behalf of Senator Brownback, who was Senator Brownback at the time, who was running for president. I don't know if you remember that little pro-life whole life tour.
Oh, of course, yeah, absolutely. I remember it well. Yeah, it was. We must have hit what, I don't know, half dozen little towns throughout Iowa in a short period of time. So that was I always remember that. That was a special time.
Yeah, Iowa in the summer. Iowa, I guess, I don't want to offend anyone. I hate the snow. I hate the cold. But in the summer and in the spring, Iowa is one of the most beautiful places in the world. And so,
I think it was the first time I met Norma McCorvey, too. I think she was part of that.
Norma was with us. That's right. It was the Row of Roe v. Wade, Norma McCorvey. You were with us, Francis Bach, and myself, and we were traveling. We were traveling around Iowa, going to churches. We were in Pella, Iowa, and which is just one of the most beautiful little towns in the world, and that's what it's about. I tell people I'm not an anti-abortion activist. I'm not a pro-life activist. I'm an anthropologist. I just want to tell the truth about the human person and say we should treat the human person as they deserve to be treated, whether it's the child in the womb or whether it's someone who's sick at the middle of life or sick at the end of life. The human person has an incomparable dignity and beauty and worth, and they should be treated properly. We should treat human beings the way that their nature demands they be treated. And we did not treat your sister. We, the United States of America, the state of Florida, we turned our back on it. We didn't treat her the way that her dignity demanded that she be treated. And that brings great shame to us. But ideologies of evil are deprivations, and they collapse under their own weight. And we will see, I'm really confident, Bobby, that we will see in our life a rebirth of a culture of life. We might be old guys, but we're going to see it. If we live to long enough, I think we're going to see it.
Well, we'll keep working at it, Jason. We need more people like you out there, that's for sure, with your energy and your passion. It would only be a matter of time if we had more people like you fighting this culture. So, but yeah, it's always been fun being around you, and I can't help but get excited when I'm in your presence. So,
all right, brother. So, yeah, we had fun. We did a concert with Randy Travis. That was fun. We've had a lot of fun, and celebrating the dignity of the human person should be fun, right? Remembering your sister. Let's end on this. What's the one thing you would like us all to know about your sister, and something you would like us to do today to remember your sister? Not remember what the state did to her, how our community banned. But it's the one thing we can do today, and then I'm going to let you go, that you want us to do to commemorate and celebrate the life. What was her favorite dinner? What was her like favorite meal? What can we do today to celebrate the life of your beautiful sister?
Oh my gosh, you put me on the spot here. You know what? My sister, I guess, just how close she was to the family, how much she just loved being around her family and people that she loved, and just her great sense of humor. And you know, when you have a good sense of humor and there's a certain kind of shyness about you, that's a great combination. My sister was so humble, and I would always tell people when I went out and spoke that, you know, the people that were supporting her life during this terrible time, that if they knew my sister, they would have been very proud of the person they were defending. She was just a special, wonderful young lady, and you know, I hope one day I get to see her again.
Well, brother, I pray that I make it, you know, I make it to heaven so I can meet your sister, and I'm proud to be the friend of your sister's brother and a friend of your sister's mother, and it's a great privilege of mine. Bobby Schindler, thanks for being on the Jason Jones Show.
Thank you, Jason. God bless you.
God bless you. All right, you can jump off. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to call my sister right now on the air. Let's do this. This is what we're going to do, guys, to celebrate the life of Terri. And, Bobby, you can jump off. I'll call you later.
Okay, Jason.
All right, thank you.
Hey, yeah, anytime, buddy.
I took you longer.
Hey, send me the link when you got it up and running, okay?
I will, and I know I cut into your time. I'm sorry I went over. I know you got a lot of interviews.
That's no problem.
All right, brother.
Okay, all right.
God bless. All right, guys, this is what I'm going to do. Let me put it on mute so you don't hear him drop off. Okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to celebrate the life of Terri by calling my sister on the air. This is what we need to do, guys. Just like the March for Life, I think we need to make the anniversary of what happened to Terri Sibling Day, Sister Day. You know, it's funny. I'm typing in Terri. I'm not typing in the name of my sister, which is pretty silly. Okay, guys, here we're going to do. You need to call your sister and or brother or family or friend. We're going to celebrate family, all right? And here we go. I'm going to call my sister on the air. I'm going to put her on the air and tell her I love her. Okay, here we go. Hold on. Here we go. And this is how we are going to celebrate the life of Terri Schindler Schiavo. I hate calling her Schiavo. That's how people know her, so you have to say it. And I don't know. I mean, it must be very hard for the family to even use that name. All right. She better answer. I can leave her a message. I'm going to put her on mute. Hold on. All right, I have it on mute. She's answering. Hello?
Please leave your message for 3.
Oh, no, can't do that. You almost heard my sister's number. Or we're going to leave her a message, guys, on the air. All right? Hold on. Hello, sister. This is your brother, and today is the anniversary of the passing of Terri Schiavo, and I'm friends with her brother, and I asked my audience on my podcast to call their sisters if they have them and tell them they love them, because Bobby is an example of how to love a sister. So just calling to tell you I love you. You're probably making deliveries. So anyway, I love you. Bye-bye. All right, my sister, her and her husband have a pasta company. They make boutique pastas. They're the only company. They're the only company that makes certain types of specialty pastas. And so all over Chicago, their pastas are the specials of the night in these different restaurants, like bow tie pasta. I don't even know. I'm vulgar and a dilettante, and I don't know, but they're very impressive. And they learn these old recipes, and they're not Italian. My sister's half Greek and half what I am, whatever that is, and he's Mexican. And they make these beautiful pastas. But that's it. That's how we're going to celebrate, because today was a tragic. For me, it was more devastating than 9/11. Just like when Andrew Cuomo, or when Governor Cuomo lit Freedom Tower up pink to celebrate infanticide, to me, was more painful than 9/11. Or hearing that Cuomo sent patients with COVID into old folks' homes and group homes to infect the elderly. To me, that was really more shocking. But the Terri thing was more shocking because we were all watching it, and we thought there's no way this is going to be allowed to happen. We are not going to deny a woman food and water and kill her. We did it. So let's not be sullen. Let's celebrate her brother, her sister, her parents, and the way that they loved her, the way that they celebrated her, the way that they fought for her, the way that they're still fighting for her. That's what the Jason Jones Show is all about. Standing with the vulnerable, standing with our friends who are fighting for the vulnerable. We're going to have some big shows coming up too, by the way. We're going to get a report from the Nuba Mountains of Sudan. There is some big news coming from the Nuba Mountains where I have friends that are living and working and struggling to protect a vulnerable community from a brutal genocide. Can't wait to have Brad Phillips from the Persecution Project Foundation on next week. And we have some, Eric Metaxas is going to be on next week. We're going to talk about his new book, Fish Out of Water. You have to get the Audible version of Fish Out of Water, because when Eric Metaxas reads that book, it's unbelievable because he's such a funny guy. And he's Greek, and so he's got a lot of Greek friends and relatives, and you're not going to be able to say their name anyway, so you have to listen to him read it. He's great. It's one of the most beautiful memoirs I've ever heard. You know, I read a lot of memoirs, and Louis L'Amour's memoir is amazing. Clarence Thomas's autobiography, My Grandfather's Son, is amazing. And I would put, right up there with the list, my 3 favorite memoirs. Clarence Thomas, Louis L'Amour, and Eric Metaxas. This episode has been brought to you by MyPillow. And you know I've been sleeping with MyPillow every night. You know by the bounce in my voice, I'm sleeping great. Eric Metaxas is also sponsored by MyPillow. That's because MyPillow gets behind great podcasts, and they support great people. They also support that big noggin of yours, so your neck doesn't hurt. So you get a great sleep, and it won't go flat. You can wash and dry it as many times as you want. It is made in the USA. China can't play games with Mike Lindell. If you don't have MyPillow or you know someone who doesn't, now is the time to get it. You got to go to the MyPillow site, MyPillow.com. Use the code Jones for deep, deep discounts. And you got to click on the Radio Listener Square to do that. This episode is also being brought to you by Movie to Movement. Our new movie, Divided Hearts of America, is on Redbox. It's on Amazon. Wherever you download your movies, you can get it there. Also by the Vulnerable People Project, standing in solidarity with the vulnerable. From the child in the womb to the child in Darfur. You know, in 2007, I put together the pro-life, whole life tour for Brownback for President. Yeah, and we had Bobby Schindler, End of Life. Norma McCorvey, the Roe of Roe v. Wade at the beginning of life. We had Francis Bach, who'd been a slave, who has a heroic story. I got to get Francis on the show. I'm going to get Francis on in the next couple of weeks. Heroic story of escaping after being kidnapped as a child, forced to live as a slave until he eventually escaped as a teenager. I believe made it to Egypt and then eventually to the United States. We did the pro-life, whole life tour. Well, I never stopped doing that. You know, I did it in politics, do it in media, and the Vulnerable People Project is committed to that, from the child in the womb to the child in Darfur. Till the end of life. Go to thegreatcampaign.org. If you listened all the way through this rambling end of the show, you are a faithful listener. Be a faithful supporter of the Vulnerable People Project. It is the monthly donors that allow me to make a budget, to strategize, to make plans. A donation of $20 or more, and you get my book, The Race to Save Our Century, with John Zmirak. And go to thegreatcampaign.org and be a faithful supporter, along with the faithful listener. Also, give us 5 stars. I always forget to do this. Give us 5 stars and write a nice comment about how great the show is. For my fragile ego, it's very helpful. And the 5 stars help the show grow, helps the show grow. All right? Until next time, it's the Jason Jones Show. Call your sisters. Call your brothers. Tell them you love them. Aloha.
This has been the Jason Jones Show, powered by Mudhouse Media.